presence. It is such a joy to be amidst all of you. What we are having today is what we would call satsang, coming together of like-minded souls, and what happens as a result is a spiritual resonance, as they call it, physics. So our topic today is the Bhagavad Gita, and some of you, how many of you have heard of the Gita? How many of us have read the Gita? And I strongly recommend to you, if you have never read this, try to read this book, and those of us have read it, I would strongly recommend read it again and again, because as you know, these books have a miracle power in them, that you pick them up after a couple of years and it seems like the book has these lines that it was not there before. And what actually happens is, as we evolve in our consciousness, we begin to tune in to what the book has to give, and the book gives more. And that's what this book is also about. So, I just came upon an article, an interesting article. We all know Krishna, who's an avatar, the great avatar from India. Krishna, we know about his birth date, but people are researching as I speak as to when he died, when he left his body. And some of us may know the circumstances of his leaving the body. So right after the Battle of Kurukshetra was done, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's okay. I'll cover that in a little bit. But this huge battle that was, the significance of that battle between the good and bad, the evil and the light. After that battle was done and the good won, Krishna, who signifies God, he leaves and goes away. He was a king, he was a saint king. From what is now Gujarat in India. It's called Dwarka. So he leaves all his kingdom and he leaves, and the saying goes that the day he left is when Kali Yuga, the dark Yuga, started, right from the day he left. And I'm not 100% accurate, but so he went into the forest, and the story goes that he was resting on one of the branches of the tamal tree, his favorite tree, when a hunter comes, and he has a bluish hue, so the hunter mistakes him for a deer and shoots, and he knew his time was, of course he's an avatar, he knew his time was coming to an end, and so he dies from the arrow of this hunter. But so I guess historically it was never recorded when he died, and it seems like he was born in the year about, again I'm kind of paraphrasing, 3200 BC. So if that is true, then this book, these scriptures are about 5,000 years old. And so the Bhagavad Gita, as Narayan already mentioned, is the Lord's song. Gita is song and the Bhagavad is the Lord. So the Lord's song, as fondly it's called the Gita in India, you can think of it as the Hindu Bible. And it's more than that, I would say, because it's not just a philosophy. It kind of brings in the essence of the philosophical teachings of Hinduism. If you take a step back, the basis of the Hinduism rests on the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion, rests on the Vedas. We really don't know when the Vedas came into existence, because the Vedas were not written for a long time. Much like traditions in many ancient civilizations, like the American Indians, you probably have heard how it goes from one generation to another just by speaking and remembering. So were the Vedas, and these were the Smritis. They used to be called the Smritis. There was no need to write it down, but the need to write down came much later, in the lower ages when people were not able to remember. And so that's when it started to be written down. So these Vedas, these 4 Vedas, are these vast sources of knowledge, and if you filter all of that in, then what you get is the Gita. The Gita, interestingly, is actually a part of the Indian epic called Mahabharata. Again, a huge, huge book. Of that, this is just one sliver of a chapter. And what this is, in one word, if I could say what is the Gita, so it is like the fountainhead. It's an experience. This is not philosophy, because as Swami Kriya explained, philosophy is love of wisdom, but this is wisdom itself, truth itself. When does truth becomes real? When we experience it. And so this is the essence of the learnings of the sages as they experience truth themselves. So these were self-realized soul, and that's what this teaching is about. It was penned by, again, a sage, Vyasa, about 5,000 years back, and it does involve historical characters. So you can think of this as it's seated in reality, but it goes much more beyond that. The characters themselves signify different aspects, different attributes, different attitudes. And it is this learning on, I guess, infinite number of levels. So yes, it is, and again, some of you may know and may not know. So the name of the battle was Kurukshetra. Kuru is this dynasty, this big, famous, has brought back many, many strong warriors. And so we are set into this certain age where Dwapara is descending. So we are right now in Dwapara and we are ascending, thank God. But then it was Dwapara descending into Kali. People were forgetting their values. Dharma, righteousness, was going down in the society. And some of you might argue, it seems just like that right now. But the good news is that we know we are in ascending, so I have hope. This is probably just a snapshot, as always happens, lots of turbulence in terms of changes. So this is Dwapara descending, and there is this huge dynasty, a kingdom, and the king, so it's so huge I can't tell you all of the story. I'll try to do justice by going at bits and pieces. So a big character is Bhishma. Bhishma is this really strong warrior of that dynasty, and he's supposed to be the next king after the death of his dad. But his dad falls in love with this woman, and the only way he could marry her is only if her children are the next heir to the throne. And how can that happen? Only if Bhishma promises never to marry and have any children. So he takes this huge oath, and that's why he gets this name Bhishma. Like, it's a terrible oath to take, and he's a young warrior, and he takes this oath that I will never, an oath of celibacy, I will never ever marry, and I'll never have any offspring. So, and then the story moves on. So there are children that are begotten from that marriage. And long story short, here is Bhishma. He's now the grandfather. There are these two brothers, Pandava, Pandu. His sons are called the Pandavas. And there is Dhritarashtra, the blind king. And he also signifies the blind attachment. He has 100 sons, the Kauravas. And so there are 5 brothers, righteous brothers, the Pandavas, and Master Paramahansa Yogananda explains how each of those brothers stands for each of our chakras. So the oldest brother is Yudhishthira. Oh, by the way, each of these 5 brothers, this is like really terrific drama here. Each of those 5 brothers are begotten through a god, because Pandu could not produce, as it was very common those days, that the king would take another able, suitable person, and there would be a child born so that there's an heir to the throne. So these are each gods, and Kunti, the mother, Pandu's first wife, has these 3 sons, and they are sons of God. And so Yudhishthira is the son of Dharma, and he stands for one of our higher chakras. Bhima stands for the heart, and he's the son of Pavana, the wind god. And Arjuna, our hero here, stands for this fiery self-control, the Manipura chakra. And we have 2 younger twin sisters, twin brothers. I'm forgetting their names. Nakula and Sahadeva. Thank you. So many names. So these 5 brothers, there's a significance here. They stand for virtue. Virtues are always less in number. On the other hand, the cousins, the Kurus, there are 100 of them. Vice is always much more and outnumbers virtues. And And so, right from the beginning, there is this. Oh, by the way, because the Kauravas are born of Dhritarashtra, and he's blind, so he never gets the throne. And Pandu is the next to heir, and he becomes the king, but he renounces the throne. He goes away with his 2 wives to the forest, and that's where these boys are born. And the blind king takes the throne. But then when the boys are able and they're brought back to Hastinapur, the kingdom, now they're ready to take throne, and they are virtuous and people love them. And so there is this animosity that's already happening between the good and the bad, because the Kauravas, these princesses, are not loved as much because they are greedy, and so the oldest one is my memory is failing me. I used to remember these names. Anyone remembers? Duryodhana. Thank you. He's king material desire. So Duryodhana is the head of those 100 brothers. And let's put it this way, he is king of material desire. He's greedy, he wants the throne to himself, he loves power, he loves the material, all aspects of life. And for reasons, obviously reasons, he's not liked as much, and he doesn't like that. And so he doesn't like the fact that everyone loves Pandavas and then they are getting ready to take the throne. So again, long story short, there are so many stories in between. Long story short, they try to kill the Pandavas in many ways, and the Pandavas run for their lives and stays in the hiding. And again, lots of drama, and then finally comes to the point where, now, do you give us a part of the kingdom and we live happily ever after? So the Pandavas ask the Kauravas, and Yudhishthira says, in fact, if I quote him correctly, he says, not even a little bit of kingdom from me, not even the tip of the needle will I give you. And then many people come and try to, bring harmony here. It does not work. The blind king also kind of helps in this whole battle that's waging over. And then Krishna, he's the king. He has a kingdom of his own, but he's already becoming famous himself because he's known to have magical powers. Some even say he's probably a god himself, Vishnu himself. And he's known to have saved a lot of people, and he does. And so Krishna also happens to be a dear friend of the Pandavas, especially Arjuna. Arjuna has a special friendship with Krishna. And I love this story. So the war is about to be beginning, and so you can imagine different kingdoms all over the country are calling out. So I'm going to be with the side of the Pandavas, and others are saying Kauravas. So they're all kind of calling out which side they are going to be. And so about Krishna. Krishna himself has a huge army. He's well known for that army. And Duryodhana is thinking, well, I better go to Krishna first. And Arjuna is thinking, I need Krishna. So they both happen to reach Krishna's place at the same time. And Duryodhana, king material desire, thinks, oh, let's see, where should I sit? Because Krishna is sleeping. And the head is the better part of the body, so he sits next to the head to claim a bigger, to make a bigger claim on Krishna. And Arjuna is the devotee. He's the warrior, and he's also the devotee. And where does a devotee sit? He sits at the feet. And guess who Krishna sees when he wakes up? Because he wakes up and he sits and he looks at, he knows this, he's playing along, right? Krishna is the knower of all. So he looks at Arjuna and says, hi Arjuna, what can I do for you? And Arjuna says, I've come to seek your assistance in the battle. Krishna says, there will be a battle, I know that. I will not take any part in that battle. Look at the significance of it. God knows all of his leela, his play is going on, but God himself does not participate in it directly. And so he says, you have two choices. Either you have my army, my resources, or you can have me, but I will not raise a weapon during the battle. Yeah. And of course Arjuna, without even thinking, says, I want you, Lord. Because he knows in his heart where the Lord is, that's where victory is always. And on the other hand, Duryodhana is like, that was close, my gosh, because that's what he was looking for. The army, the resources. The material mind always looks for the resources. And so Krishna becomes the charioteer. He is running the chariot of Arjuna. And I also find that significance beautiful. Arjuna has given the reins of his life to the Lord. And so the whole story of the Gita starts on that point where the two sides are now poised for battle, and there is Arjuna. He is leading the Pandavas, and his chariot is being run by Krishna. And he says, "Oh Krishna, take me through this entire scene. So please run my chariot and take me and let me see who my sides are." So this is a devotee who has been called to come upon the spiritual path, and for the last time he's saying, okay, before I embark on this battle, take me through this. And so as Krishna is taking him through that middle line, he looks at these people that he's supposed to fight. Here is Drona, his teacher. Drona stands for habit. So Drona is his guru. From little childhood, these princes all trained under Drona. Arjuna is known for his archery, and that happened because of Drona, his favorite teacher. And there was Bhishma, his grandfather, who also happens to be on the other side. And he says, he just breaks down at that point. He throws down his bow and arrow and he says, I cannot fight. The bow stands for our spine, because that's where all the work, the battle is going to happen. And Krishna says, Arjuna, you're a warrior, and life is a battlefield. Pick up your bow and get ready to battle. Because who are you? What are you lamenting for? Are you going to be killing? You think these are actual people with bodies? We are not our bodies. And that starts the whole dissertation of who are we in reality. And the essence of these teachings are telling us there's no point in pursuing after physical fulfillment, because that does not bring us any happiness. Because we are not this body. We are much more than this body, and if we are to find fulfillment in life, we have to go deeper. And we have to fight the battle. What is the battle here? The battle is basically many levels of it. Look around you. There are battles of light and darkness happening as we speak, right? So that battle that we are also a part of through our everyday lives. But if we really look deeper into it, the battle is happening within us. In fact, more specifically in the spine. And if you are going to be taking the Raja course, you will understand how it's all about energy. As the energy rises up the spine, we feel joyful. That's our natural state. But when desires, negative attributes pull down on that energy, it constricts and goes down and we feel sad. And so the battle is actually in the spine. And Kriya Yoga fits right into it. Kriya Yoga is this technique that acts directly on the energy in the spine, helping us evolve at a much quicker rate. And so the story goes on, but the Gita is, I'm going to basically now, is my time up? Okay.
1 minute.
Okay. I kind of lost track of time there, so I'm going to wrap it up with just a few things. So Krishna is saying, "O Arjuna, be thou a yogi." There are 3 aspects of the teachings or we can call these systems. One is the Shankhya system, and the Shankhya is saying why we cannot find happiness in this world. Because it's an illusory world. So we have to go deeper and we have to find who the real I am. Remember how Dharmadevi was talking about the frozen lake? It's very difficult to cut through delusion. The easiest way is if I can know who I am, that will give me a clue who the truth is or God is. Because in the end, you'll know that there's no difference. There's just one. And so by knowing, by drilling inside us, and we carry the temple, the altar within us, we will know who the infinite is. And that's Shankhya is explaining this is not the way, go inside. Yoga is telling the how. So how do I go inside, and what are the techniques I can practice so that I can lift my energy up? And that's yoga and Patanjali, and there are classes that we give based on that, and that's also a part of Kriya Yoga. Yoga is not only the posture here. These are different steps that Patanjali is explaining we do. We start with the right attitudes, the yamas and niyamas, and go all the way into merging into oneness with the infinite. And so that's yoga. And then the last aspect is Vedanta, is explaining what are we doing all this for? What is that end? So when I merge into the infinite, what is the nature of that infinite? And Vedanta is explaining the nature of that Brahman, that God. And so these are the triune aspects of the teachings, and all of this comes out as Krishna is telling practical ways of doing things in our everyday lives that will lead us into our happiness. Why are we doing this? Because Satchidananda, the ever-present, ever-new bliss, is basically within us. We are a reflection of that. And we are all wanting to be happy. I don't want to be greedy. I don't want to be selfish. I want to be giving. I want to share because I want to be happy. That is my reality, that bliss within me that I've covered with all these desires, and so the light cannot come out. And that is the delusion. So again and again, Krishna is urging Arjuna to be the warrior. And you have to remember that. So this is a battlefield. Fight the battle of life. And yes, it is not easy, but fight the battle of life constantly and use these techniques and merge yourself back. Another aspect of Gita I really love is the compassion of Krishna, compassion of God. So he's saying in this part, he's saying, I'll quote, immerse your consciousness in me alone, and that's samadhi. If you fail, practice yoga. Practice yoga and improve your power of concentration, and that too will bring you to me at the end. If you fail in doing yoga, then perform all actions thinking of me. That too will bring you to me. And even if you fail in that, just give me your intention. What you intend to, that is, you want to be with me and you want to know me. And then finally he's saying, even if you fail in that, just give me your failure. Isn't that sweet? So, and then he's also saying, know this for a certainty, my devotee is not lost. Anything that we are doing is not lost. And it may seem like hopeless, it might seem sometimes so bleak and desolate. Every little effort that we are making for God is all accounted for. Nothing is getting lost. And then the last line, he's saying, you shall attain me. There is no two ways to this. We will all attain God. Some will take a circuitous route, some will take a short route, others will take all kinds of creative ways, but once we find God, it will be our way, uniquely. Yes, the Spirit will be singing the unique song through each one of us. And with that, I wanted to share something that I wanted to share with you because I have experienced and I wanted to share this with you. So can we very quickly close our eyes, sit up straight. And I want everyone to close their eyes and take yourselves back into your childhood days. So imagine you are this little boy or a little girl and you're sitting in the lap of your mother, your divine mother, because behind all our earthly mothers is that one mother of all mother, divine mother. Feel her proximity to you. Feel her hand on your head as she loves you. And feel that sense of relaxation. You have nothing to worry. You have your mother taking care of you. Feel your heart relax. Meditate on that relaxation and peace. And now gently open your eyes. Whenever we feel stressed by life, in the battlefield of life, Krishna is also saying, through Divine Mother, yes, we all have to fight a battle, and at the end of the battle you will come to me. But also remember, my child, you're not alone. I'm right here with you. And so whenever we feel stressed, we can always come back to this visualization. You're sitting in Divine Mother's lap, and she's right there. As Paul had said, she's more closer than we can even imagine. If we knew how much she loved us, we would all die of joy. So.
Really, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak and to share the teachings as I understand them. Now, you know, I'm nobody really. I'm a student just like everybody else. I still take classes. I still struggle just like everybody else. But you know, one of the things that I found really fascinating when I ventured onto this path, which I found that really I started this path about 1970, although I didn't wake up to it till about 2010. I'm a little slow learner. But I realized I was raised a Christian, and Jesus Christ was my disciple. I was a disciple of Jesus Christ. I love Jesus, and I really was constantly wondering, you know, as I sat in church, how am I going to find God? How is that going to happen? Because the ministers would speak, and I would hear them, and I'd go home and I'd think, what the heck did they just say? Because it was confusing to me. There was never really a path. I couldn't see, and I'm the person, I want to see how does this go? What are the steps to get there? Read the Bible, be a good person, understand the Ten Commandments, all perfect. But there wasn't enough for me. And so what I'm here to talk to you today, and it's kind of funny, as I listen to all of the speakers, it really comes down to this path that we're on. And the path of yoga, which I'm going to talk about today, is really designed to get us there. It's not something that's out there in the distance that we have to wonder about. This has been time tested. These are things that have come down 5,000 years ago. And it's now very prevalent, because look at us all, we're all searching for something. That nobody in this room has the answer. Everybody wants to find God. And so this path gets you there. And I can tell you that because I experienced this. The path to Kriya Yoga. Oh my gosh, I had a friend tell me that when she was 19, she took the she took the Kriya courses, but she's left that. And I thought, how? How did you do that? Once you learn Kriya, how do you leave it? Because it's like God. You go from believing there's a God to really knowing inside your soul that there's a God. There's no doubt now in my mind that there's God. So the path that I'm going to talk about, there's three ways that the saints and sages have showed us about how to find God. And the first one is Jnana Yogi. So as Jnana Yoga offers us the path of wisdom, the path of discrimination. And you know, this is not a path that's like wishy-washy where you can sit in church and somebody's going to spoon feed you and you're going to find God. No. You got to look inside your soul. You got to dig it up. You're going to look at stuff you didn't want to look at. That's why this is a hard path. When they say if you're going to enter on the path, this path is hard, because it's a lot easier to sit in church and have somebody spoon feed you. But when you actually have to get down and dig around in the dirt and figure out the layers upon layers of stuff that you've told yourself is not true, then you got to look at it. You know, go, I don't really want to go in there. I don't want to do it. So that's the reason. But you know what? There's great joy in it as well, because there is an outcome to this. So the wisdom of yoga, okay, is that we have to look at what do we know is true. So we tell ourselves a bunch of stuff, you know. We worry about a lot of things. We conjure up a lot of ideas about who we are. But the truth is, who are we really? And one of the ways I came to this path too is that I went to a yoga class and she offered up the 3 questions, which tie perfectly into this whole thing of who am I? What do I want? And what is my purpose? So I'm going to take you through a little of that as well. But who am I is the question that the Jnana yogi asks. Who am I? Am I my things? Am I my belongings? Am I my likes and dislikes? Which, let's face it, the list is long. You know, how many things don't I like? I don't like a lot of things, or I didn't like a lot of things. There was a point in life where, like, if my husband didn't take out the garbage, oh my God, it was a night of hell. So how many things didn't I like? I didn't like that the car in front of me wasn't driving fast enough. I didn't like when I'd get in line at the grocery store and the guy would pay with pennies in front of me, and I'm in a hurry, right? So, there's a lot of things. Think about what you like and don't like. And the reason this is a problem for us is because what it does is it locks us in. It prevents us from the flow of life. It keeps us from living in the moment. We're so worried about being offended. How many people have been offended lately? So Jnana Yoga is to realize that there's no reason to be offended because it's not about you. It's not about you. You can actually dissolve all of that. You don't have to get caught up. You didn't treat me right. You didn't say, no, that doesn't affect us. So it's the path of knowledge and wisdom and discrimination. That's what the Jnana Yogi strives for. But it's not wisdom to say, oh my gosh, look at how much stuff I've learned, and I can let me tell you how much No. It's the wisdom of knowing that the main purpose that you're here is to find God. Once you get that clear in the wisdom of all your thinking, that you're really here to find God, everything else kind of starts to happen in a very clear manner. So let's just take a minute and just sit up nice and tall. And I'm going to ask you the question of who am I? Now, the first time I heard this question, I think my head exploded. I was like, who am I? I haven't a clue who I am. I don't know who I am. Who am I? And I sat with that for years until I finally realized who I was. So you're going to sit up nice and tall. You're going to take a nice inhale through the nose. Close your eyes. Lift the gaze to that place between the eyebrows. And so I offer the question to you, who am I? And you internalize that. You say to yourself internally, who am I? Who am I? And now I'm going to offer you a few things, and you can focus on them or move along. But who are you? Are you the car in your driveway? The clothes in your closet? Your friends? Are you the abundance that you have created or the lack of it? Are you any of the material things? And if you are, have they brought you happiness? So who are you? And now, think about it, and I have to move quick. Usually this is like a 20-minute, 30-minute meditation, so I'm going to move pretty quickly so you might get whiplash. But who are you? Are you these things, these exterior things? Are you the things that can be taken from you in a moment, in a flash, in a flood? What's left when all of that is gone? When you lose everything, and we all know people, floods, fires, earthquakes, volcanoes, they lose everything. Who are you now? With everything gone. You don't have the car, you don't have the house. Your money's gone, your friendship, your relationships are gone. And now open your eyes. So who are you when all that's gone? I'm here to tell you that you are a child of the Creator of all things. That's who you are at your core. That can never be taken from you. That's what you come into the world with. That's our soul nature. We are a child of the Creator of God. And when you think about that, think about God. As if you're the child of the Creator of all things, guess what? God is in you. God just didn't, create you and then move off the planet. No. You are part of God. God lives in you, breathes in you, presents himself to you every day, comes to the door of your heart, knocking on it every day to say, where are you? I want to, hello, I'm here. And you say, not today because I'm busy washing the car, or I don't have time. But the truth is, once you realize that you are part of the Creator of all things, let's think about that. Okay, so what do you want in your life? You have to focus on it. That's why it takes work. You have to believe that you are a child of God, that God breathed life into you, and everything in our existence came from the thought of God. So if you're the thought of God, what are you thinking? What are you telling yourself? And so you can also not be 50-50 about this. You can't say, oh, you know, I really want this God, but I'm really not worthy. No. The universe does not work that way. You cannot be, you have to be 100%. God, I want this. And you have to call it out, and then you have to start to believe it's that. To live it like it is. Because God created everything with a thought. How powerful are your thoughts? You've already created your life. Everything in your life began with a thought. The reason you went to school, you decided you wanted to marry this person. You became Swami. You had a thought about it, and then the world manifested accordingly. So that's the Jnana Yogi. That's the thought of wisdom. Any questions? Any questions on that? You're thinking. So that's the Jnana Yogi. Who am I? So you ask yourself that question during the day. As things get really chaotic and you start feeling that tug of not being worthy or not wanting, what am I creating right now? Am I creating what I want, what I focus on, or am I affirming what I don't want? Because how many times we want something and yet I'm not worthy, or I don't, whatever you're telling yourself that's negative, those things will follow you. They will become your neighbors. They'll live in your house. They'll move in, and they'll become you. Whatever you think you don't want will become you. I guarantee it. And then the second one is the Bhakti Yoga. And the Bhakti Yoga is yoga of devotion. It's yoga of the heart. It's when we become so clear that we're a child of God, that all we want is God. You know, it's developing that desire. They say once you open your heart to God and you say, I love you, God. Please come into my life. Be with me. And you start to live in that place, it's no longer an effort to get up and meditate in the morning. Like somebody said, how do you get up in the morning and meditate? God drags me out of bed in the morning. God says, get up and meditate. Because that's where I'm one-to-one with God, my lover. It's not an effort anymore. It becomes a driving force. I have to get up. I want to stay in bed. My husband's in bed. You know, it's all great. But no, I have to get up. I get up and I put my feet on the floor and down I go, and I'm looking, searching for that connection, that heartfelt devotion of God. And that's what the Bhakti Yoga wants. Wants to develop that relationship with God from the heart, to be able to feel it. That's why we say Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, friend, beloved God. We make it personal. God is not something outside of us, it's inside. So that's what we look for in Bhakti Yoga. And the question is, what do I want? So what do I want? Close your eyes just for a second. If you could have anything in the world, we already know that what we have in the material is not fulfilling. We constantly want. We're always looking out of ourselves to find something. What do we want? But they're not fulfilling. What do I really want? I want God. Make it the moment now where you stand in that and say, I want God above everything. Because that's the Jnana Yoga, that's the Bhakti Yoga. I want God, only God. I want only Thee, Lord, Thee, only Thee. Everything else is like eating sand. It's not fulfilling. The only thing that fulfills us, it's the cry of the soul. We come in empty. We feel, there's that gnawing feeling that maybe we can fill it with something externally, but the truth is all we want is God. Everything else is an illusion to take us from that. So make your path now. What do you want? I want God. Show me God. I love Narayan said the other day when I was in class, look into the eyes of the masters. Look in the eye of Paramahansa Yogananda and say, invite me, introduce me to God. You have to make it from the heart. Like it's like something that you need. It's like you need breath of air. You need air, you need life. You need to know God. Choose it now. And now you can open your eyes. And then the last one is Karma Yogi. Karma Yoga is great. Somebody said to me, asked me a couple of questions recently about, and what I feel like is I do a lot of Karma Yogi work, and it's with joy. And what we do is we devote ourselves. It's the yogic path of action. It's the action without the desire for the fruit of action. It means that I don't have to sit around and go, look what I did. Did you see what I did? Did you see that? Wow, did you notice? God, did you notice what I did? God notices what you do. Come to me in silence. Show me in silence what you do. Come and sit in the morning and meditate. Show me that. That's what God says. God already sees everything. He knows everything we've ever done since the beginning of time. So that's what God does. God says, show me your devotion, show me your love, and then show me your action. How do you help others? And how do you help yourself? So the next question that is asked is, what is my purpose? The Karma Yogi asks, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Why did I come? Who hasn't asked that question of themselves? Why am I here? Why did I come here? I mean, you left God, the creator of all things, bliss, beautiful, wonderful peace, serenity, to be in the body on the earth right now? What's the purpose of that? So close your eyes and let's do, what is your purpose? You hear those words, you lift them up to the place between the eyebrows. What is your purpose? Why did you come? Did you come just to be another body on the planet? Or did you come to fulfill something that has not yet been observed by you? What's your purpose? God is looking for you to identify why you came. And you know why we came? To find God in the body. Why we're here. Because we have tremendous amount of movement on the going out. There's lots of flow in energy moving out of us. That's why we have 5 senses. It's always a wash of things going out. And so what we need to learn and to understand is, how do we pull that back into us and find God from that place? So you may open your eyes. So powerful questions. Who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? These are questions that have been asked down the millennium of time. These are not new questions that I just thought up here while I'm standing here. These are very deep questions that God has given us so that we can find out who we are. We're children of God. We're a child of the Creator. We have the same things the Creator has. The storage house of what God has is mine. Start living from that place. What would your life look like if you lived from that place with that understanding that everything in the universe that you want, in a good way, we're not talking material things, everything though is available to you. And then if you open up your heart and you say, God, I want only you. How would that look if you believed that that was possible? Because God is knocking every day. I love the visual of I think it was Eckhart Tolle, which I quoted frequently because he was one of the books that I read that was like one of the ta-da moments for me, like ta-da, where he said, the master comes to our heart every day. He's constantly knocking on the door. Open your heart to me. Let me come in. And most of the time we're like, not today, sorry. I gotta go, I gotta catch the bus, I got things to do. No. You can hear him come every day, and he never gets tired of coming. He's waiting for us, waiting to show us, to be one with us. And isn't that what we all want? So this path of Raja Yoga, if you haven't taken the class, and even if you have taken the class, take it again. Because every time you take it, there's a new layer of understanding that comes through. There's something new that's going to come out. I took the class for 30 days when I became a yoga teacher. I've taken it from Narayana Dharmadevi. I'm taking it from Keshava and Suryani. Every time I take the class, I teach it. it's like a new awareness. There's stuff in it because every day we're new. It's not the same old person that I'm dragging in here every Tuesday night. No, there's somebody new coming and showing up and saying, wow, that's an interesting perspective. That was worth the price of admission. Because this is the path of knowledge. Once we're on the path here, we never stop learning. It's a constant thing. If you stop learning, your relationship with God is going to wane. It's just going to fall off because we need to be active. We need the community of people that think alike, that want to share. That have you noticed once you're on this path, you go out to lunch with some of your friends, and by the end of lunch, you're going like, oh my God, I'm so bored. You told me that story about your boyfriend 6 years ago, and you're still carrying that around. No, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to know, how does God show up in your life? That's what I want to know. And here's where we find it. We don't find it out there in the people who are still struggling and searching. We find it from people with like mind. That's why these communities are so powerful. That's what drew you in here today. Am I done?
Brother of Eleanor, in that I'm nobody. I'm not going to yell at you. So the topic today is the anatomy of Kriya Yoga. The topic was assigned to me about 2 months ago, and being me, waited until last night. To prepare. Except on Thursday, I had the whole day to myself, and I decided, let me see what's out there in the literature. I checked with Harvard and Columbia and the UCs and in Google, and I was totally inundated with information. Meditation and blood pressure, meditation and depression, meditation and this and that. There is so much information that I did absolutely nothing on Thursday. That's why I waited until last night. There is so much research out there which makes me think we know absolutely nothing about this topic. We know absolutely nothing about the human body, about nature. It's just almost like we live on planet Earth and we know very little about the universe. And that's exactly how much we know about our own bodies, our own nature. Very, very little. Now, there was one story that really caught my attention in my research on Thursday. That was a story of one woman. She wrote about herself, about her struggle with depression since the age of 3. She struggled with it throughout her life, school, and she's a very strong woman. She finished high school, no medications, college, no medications. After that, she couldn't really keep up with life. She became a journalist, and yet she couldn't get out of bed in the morning. She took medication after medication. One gave her the side effect, the other one gave her the side effect, the other one gave her anxiety, the other one took anxiety, but the depressions continued. Finally, a friend of hers told her about meditation. She downloads some app and starts to meditate, the guided meditation every day. Within 1 week, she started feeling completely different. Within 1 week. Fast forward, in 6 months, she was taking off her medications altogether. A very happy person. She actually wrote this story in the Washington Post this past February, exactly 6 months ago on the 26th of February. Very touching story. Another story that caught my attention was Kriya Yoga and depression. This was done at Harvard 3 years ago. It came out 2 years ago. And there were about 48 people that were completely unresponsive to medications for their depression. And they added meditation, in fact, a type of Kriya Yoga, Kriya meditation, which is a bit, very little difference to what we practice, but anyway, it's a Kriya Yoga, and I read the description of it, and very similar. And they were able to reverse their depressive symptoms. And now it's such a strong study that it's been recommended to add meditation into the treatment of depression that is unresponsive to medication. Of course, the way things work in the medical field, it takes forever before that's implemented, but we will see. In 1861, that gentleman at the far end on the altar, Lahiri Mahashaya, took Kriya initiation from the great avatar Babaji. Science and art that was lost for 5,000 years during the Dark Ages. And after that, after he initiated his own disciples, anybody that comes to him with any kind of problem, marital problem, do more Kriya. Financial problem, do Kriya. Stomachache, do Kriya. Really? And yet, what is it, 200 years after, the doctors are saying, do Kriya. So what is this Kriya? How does it work? Why does it work? And where does it work? And that's my topic, where does it work? So that brings us to the anatomy of Kriya Yoga. Let's see if this works. Okay, this is Paramahansa Ananda that everybody's been referring to as master today. He's our guru, that's why we call him master. He's not our master, he's master of the ego. That's why he's a master, that's why all the masters are on the altar. He said the spine and the brain are the altars of God. The spine and the brain are the altars of God. Padma briefly mentioned about the chakras and the different channels in the spine that lead us to the infinite, and so did Paul, the Christ consciousness center, the spiritual eye, the point between the eyebrows, that lead us to the infinite. So, the brain, the spine, just to focus on those two, are the altars of God. But Kriya Yoga works in everything, in our senses, in our whole body. I'm not going to go through the techniques of it. That's going to take a lot of classes and training and then initiation. That's how Kriya is given. But we're just going to focus on where in the body it works. So let's start with the brain. This is actually a real picture of the brain. Fresh cadaver right after. Anyway, I am by training I'm a general surgeon. I happen to practice in trauma surgery for some time in three different countries, and my first experience with the actual brain was in a trauma setting, and what I saw really completely surprised me, because in medical school this is what I saw. And then we did actual dead brains that were preserved in formalin that had a little kind of harder consistency. That's what to me brain was. But the actual brain has the consistency of oatmeal, or somebody described it as tapioca pudding. That's the consistency of the brain. But this Mother Nature is such a great designer. She put it in our skull, covered by what we call meninges, different linings of brain cover. So that's why it looks beautiful like this. It is about 3 pounds. To me, it's beautiful. It's a work of God. It's about 3 pounds in the average person. And I don't know where it came from, but it was claimed that there are 1.1 trillion brain cells in our head. And that number has been repeated for decades, until one really brave Brazilian woman a few years ago, she decided to, I'm not going to gross you out, I know it's after lunch. What she did was she created a way to dissolve the cell membranes of the whole brain and created what she called brain soup. And she mixed the whole thing together until it became totally homogeneous. So until then, what they used to do was they would take a little piece of the brain and count the cells, and they say, okay, this many cells, so extrapolate a number, and so the brain would have 1.1 trillion cells. Not really. What she found was there are only 212 billion cells. Out of those, 86 billion are neurons. Neurons versus the other cells in the brain are, what's the difference? The difference is neurons can actually fire an action potential. That's what's called action potential. It's an actual electricity that they can fire. That's what makes a neuron different from the other cells. The other cells are called, in general, glia cells. There are 3 types. When I went to school, we were just told those are the names and just forget about it because no one knew what they did. Now we do. The oligodendrocytes, it's kind of a mouthful, those are what create the covering of each neuron. You've heard of multiple sclerosis, right? So that's a disease where this part of the cells, these cells are not doing their job very well, so the myelin sheath, the covering of the neuron, gets weaker and weaker and it totally disappears in a certain segment of the nerve cell. When that happens, the nerve is not going to fire the way it's supposed to, and that's what creates all the symptoms in people with multiple sclerosis. Microglia, those are the cells that keep an eye in the brain and make sure that there are no invaders, and it's all about the immune system. Then astrocytes, those are actually, now scientists are figuring out what they actually do. They're amazing in that they modulate the work of every neuron. Each astrocyte has connections to up to 5,000 different neuron cells, and they make sure that the brain is structurally sound, and at the same time, each neuron is firing properly. I'm not going to go into further details because there's no time. This is the real brain in a brain surgery. I just wanted people to see what it looks like. And these are the membranes that I was talking about. This is what covers the brain, and here's the scalp. Mother Nature is...
That's from the top?
What is that?
That's from the top?
This is from the top, exactly on the left side of the parietal bone. So for us, what we're going to cover is the prefrontal area and the midbrain and the medulla, and then of course the spine. For meditation in yoga, that's what we usually concern ourselves with, because those are the places where most change takes place after meditation. So this is an actual photograph, electron micrograph of a neuron, and that one is one of an astrocyte. You see how there are connections with each neuron cells in the area. So this is really fascinating to me. A neuron, a nerve cell in the brain, is so thin, at its thickest part, it's only 0.1 micron, 4 to 100 micron in diameter. A micron is 1/1000th of a millimeter. It's so tiny you can't even see it. However, they can be as long as 1 meter. It's like 3.3 feet. So one nerve cell can probably start from the brain, go all the way down to the base of the spine. How does it stay in place? God does this. Each neuron can have so many connections, and with training, with learning, with exercise, with meditation, our connections with other neurons, each neuron's connection with other neuron cells can increase, can decrease, can be modified. The brain is so ready to be programmed by what we do. There are ways of measuring what a brain cell does. One is electroencephalogram, EEG. That's measuring the electrical waves in the brain. But this is such an unrefined way of measuring the activity in the brain. It's almost like if the aliens came and decided to see what we're doing here, and they just put an electrode 100 million miles away and see what kind of electrical activity we're emitting from planet Earth. That's how inaccurate this is. However, even with that, we've been able to gather so much information that doctors are actually using this every single day, and researchers are using it every single day. There are 5 different kinds of brain waves. This is the highest frequency brain wave, that's 30 hertz and above, usually about 40, if it can go up to 100. That's what's happening when you're learning, when you're thinking, when you have to make a decision, when your brain is at its most active. That's the kind of brain wave it emits. This is what you're doing right now, wakeful, communicating, interacting. That's the kind of brain wave you have, that's beta. Alpha is when we start meditating and going into the initial stages of meditation, our heart rate is calmer, blood pressure is going down, we're less fidgety, less anxious. That's the kind of state we have. When we go into theta, that's real meditation. In theta state, especially in the prefrontal areas, it's been known that the person's creativity and intuitive ability increases. I work with someone who does psychotherapy and also neurofeedback. I don't want to go into the details, but we have actually seen that when people we put them into alpha and alpha theta states, like in between, as soon as they go into alpha theta, they all of a sudden they become so creative and intuitive. Sometimes they report the following day, oh my goodness, this is the experience that I had. So we've seen this ourselves. Delta is either when you're drunk, blacked out, or completely in deep state of dreamless sleep, completely relaxed.
Michael, what was
Yes.
the top one?
The top one, gamma.
Yeah.
That's gamma.
Thank you.
I was trying to be fancy when I put the Greek alphabets. So gamma, beta, alpha, theta, and delta. So there was a study they did, this was a long time ago, on Tibetan monks. And they compared them to people that have never meditated before. The monks had meditated collectively up to more than 20,000 hours, about 48 of them, maybe 50 of them. And what they did was, so each group, they put them into a guided meditation into alpha state. Now, that was not hard. They both went into alpha state. What they noticed, on the other hand, was the meditators, the experienced meditators, were able to go into alpha state within 2 seconds, no problem. Whereas the people that had no experience in meditation, it took a long time. And what they did was, once they were all in alpha state, they rang a bell. When you've experienced this before, when you're meditating and suddenly somebody opens the door, you just wake up you come out of your state of deep meditation. And then how long does it take you to get back into that state? 2 seconds? 20 minutes? You just get upset and you never go back? So what happened was, in these meditators, they were able to get back to alpha state within 2 seconds. The average for the other group was over a minute, 20 seconds, some of them much longer. And then what they did was they kept ringing. They would wait another 5 minutes and bing! The meditators, they would wake up, but go back to alpha state right away. The other ones were taking a little shorter. 1 minute became 45 seconds. Another one, 30 seconds. So it kept going down. So now that period of time where you wake up and then go back, that lag of time is called alpha blocking. Alpha state is being blocked, that's what it means. So for the meditators, it was 2 seconds. The other ones, it varied from 20 and above. With repeated stimuli, with repeated disturbance, that is, the alpha blocking time for the unexperienced meditators kept going down and down. 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 2 seconds, when completely gone. So they would ring the bell, they would not wake up. That's called habituation. For the experienced meditators, that did not happen. They would still wake up for 2 seconds, but go back into alpha state. And so habituation was seen in the non-meditators, but the meditators, the experienced meditators, did not. They would still wake up but go back. Still wake up but go back. So what does that mean? It's not that they're not arousable. They are, but they just accept it, but go back to meditation. That's exactly what Dharmadeva was describing earlier when we were meditating. Expansive state. You're accepting. You hear the stimuli. Okay, you hear it, you let it go, you go back. Something happens, you hear it, you accept it, you go back. That's the expansive state. At the same time, they were very focused. That's expansion and concentration. Exactly the goal that we're seeking in meditation. And they were able to see this. This is decades ago with the Tibetan monks, and thanks to the EEG. So, I said we're going to talk about the prefrontal area. So the prefrontal area is the part of the brain that sits right above our eyes. And so the frontal lobe, I think I'm going to go on this other side. So this whole area is the frontal lobe. But this particular area, we call it the prefrontal area, the prefrontal lobe, on each brain. It is involved with higher thinking, compassion, kindness, all the qualities that we want to develop it with meditation. That's involved in this area. And the other area we're going to talk about is the limbic system. So this is the limbic system. If you took this part out of the brain, it would look like this. And here's the connection to the prefrontal lobe. That's what it looks like. It's a very primitive part of the brain, meaning even an evolved species have the exact same kind of limbic system in their brain, just like we do. The prefrontal lobe, on the other hand, this part is only existent in humans and some very highly evolved animals like dolphins. Now, we use this system for learning, for memory, for our protection, fight or flight mechanism, and it has several different structures within that system. In fact, a lot of neuroscientists don't even agree in what's considered the limbic system, but they all agree on that it has the amygdala, hippocampus, the mammillary bodies. They're involved with, those are for memory, M for memory and mammillary, and the hippocampus is also involved in processing new information and memory. It does not store memory on its own, but it just processes it and sends it to the cortical lobes, like to the prefrontal or any other cortical areas of the brain. This is the olfactory bulb. I have this. When you smell a certain kind of sense of smell, like it could be an incense or perfume or something, does it trigger any kind of memory from the past?
Yes.
I have a very strong sense of that, and I thought that was crazy. But the reason is, this is the olfactory bulb, and it's very close to the mammillary bodies, very close to the thalamus and hypothalamus that are involved with learning and with memory. That's the reason, it's just because there are connections between those two regions. Meditation, because we are focused on the prefrontal cortex, it actually influences the limbic system, and that's why long-term meditators are less reactive, kinder, more compassionate. That's what we're trying to develop, and that's the reason, because this whole limbic system is very closely connected to the prefrontal cortex. I should not take too long. The next part is the spine and the chakras. We have the Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipura. This is the coccygeal. That's exactly where the tailbone is. And then an inch and a half above that is the sacral area, the lumbar area, Manipura, the heart, Anahata, the cervical Vishuddha, the ajna, that's the medulla, and its positive aspect of that is the point between the eyebrows. That's the Chaitanya, that's the Christ consciousness center. And above all that is the Sahasrara. That's not actually part of the chakras, but that's also a very important region in the astral body, not in the physical body, but in the astral body. But this is an actual spine, and the nerve plexuses that just coincidentally happen to mirror what the Eastern scriptures say. Coccygeal, we have the coccygeal plexus. Lumbar, we have sacral, heart, the medulla itself, and the cluster Chaitanya with the thalamus and the pineal gland. They knew this thousands of years ago. This is what they've been teaching from the East, and our scientists are figuring this out today. Now, with meditation, there are changes that take place in the brain. I'm going to be very quick about this. We were very lucky to have Dr. Peter Van Houten from the village here, and he discussed this a few months ago, I think. The brain can be remodeled in so many different ways. Neurogenesis, it means the formation of new brain cells. We were told, I was taught in school that by the time you get to the age of 13, you're done with new brain cells. By the time you get to age 7, you start slowing down, and at age 13, it stops. After that, you just live with whatever you have. And in fact, they start dying. That's not true. They're figuring out now that there's actually neurogenesis that's taking place throughout our lives. There was an article that came out in April from Columbia University that they were able to show in newly dyed brains. They were able to find, in fact, in the hippocampal area, in the limbic system, there were actually new brain cells. There's a way to figure that out. I shouldn't go into the details of it, but there's a way to figure out how old a neuron is. And they were able to find new neurons. And in the exact same number that they were able to find in a 12-year-old and a 13-year-old. And some of these people that they examined were 79 years old. And rewiring, that's another one, which is new connections between existing brain cells. That's another way of the brain remodeling itself. The third one, neuroplasticity. Dr. Peter went into this very in detail. There are two types, structural and functional. Just know that there is neuroplasticity. That means the brain is able to modify itself as needed. You give it, you want to direct it to whatever you want, to good or to bad. And it will rewire itself and restructure itself, and it will give you what you want. Recruitment, this is very interesting. I didn't know this for a long time, and I was not taught this in school. What it is if you have, when you have a certain, let's say, focus in your life, and let's say you're a writer, and your writing and your creative skills are very developed, and you have other areas that in your brain that do other things, or let's say music, and you're not a very musically talented person. Now you start picking up music, and you're learning a new instrument, and you're writing music. All of a sudden, the area of the brain that deals with music starts gathering and recruiting other neurons in that area that were not musically oriented neurons before. All of a sudden, they start working together with that area and become music cells. Recruitment. Smart. This is the hippocampal area in the brain. In the limbic system. Before and after, only 8 weeks of meditation. See the lighting here compared to this one. So you see more yellow and less red, right? Over here you see more red and less yellow. What does that mean? Look at the numbers here. The more yellow, the more hyperactive it is. So within, the red, before and after. So there is less red here and there is less yellow here. That means it quieted down. That's the amygdala. That's the area that's involved with fear, anxiety, sexual impulsiveness. That's the area that actually shrunk in activity after only 8 weeks of meditation. And what they did was they, let me check. What they did was they were showing these people very emotionally involved films while they were checking their MRI. While they were hooked up, they would be watching a certain kind of movie. And after 8 weeks of meditating, they were not very reactive as they were before. And this is gray matter increase in the hippocampal area. This is what you want, and this is after meditation, of course. And the more red, the higher the number is. And this is the left and the right brain. So this is the before and after. All right, so when, I'm going to be quick. I'm going back down to the spine. When we breathe, we have the vagus nerve that comes from the brain all the way down to the heart, the lungs, and the intestines all the way down. And that's what causes breathing, because it supplies the diaphragm. That's our breathing muscle, our main breathing muscle. And when we take a deep breath, we're doing that actively and consciously. What if we're asleep at night? Who does the breathing for us? Mother Nature does. How does that work? There are actually astral channels that take care of this, even during the day. We think we're controlling our breathing, but you've been watching here and talking, and you didn't even think about breathing, but your body actually does it on its own. That's because we have astral channels on either side of the body that Irda and the Pingala. Irda on the left side for inhaling, the channel, the energy goes up right before we take a breath and goes down for exhalation. And that's how Irda Pingala work. Now, when we're able to merge those, life is all about duality, and connection with God is about all eliminating that duality and merging everything together. And when these two, the Irda and the Pingala, merge, that's when we're able to go into the deeper channel, that's the Sushumna. That channel opens. That's when we're able to raise the energy all the way up into the medulla, into the spiritual eye. And once we're able to do that, as the energy rises, it will actually energize and awaken each chakra, starting from the coccygeal chakra to sacral, the lumbar, and all the way up into the spiritual eye. When that happens, when the energy, the positive energy in our Christ consciousness center is able to rise, the Kundalini power from the base of the spine goes all the way up and merges with the Cluster Chaitanya, then a subtle channel opens from the spiritual eye into the top of the head. That's the Sahasrara that I mentioned earlier. That's when we have actually achieved yoga, union with the infinite. Thank you.